What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Elevation here with another episode of the JBP Elevated, where we speak on the Joe Budden podcast and all of his co-hosts on and off the pod. I've been speaking a lot about the Joe Budden podcast, the Joe Budden network, and the business acumen of Joe Budden, so I kind of wanted to further that in today's episode, except this time, instead of just putting pictures of the Patreon episodes or the JBP on this episode of this video, I have proof from my own YouTube channel and then just other YouTube channels that are associated with Joe, just to kind of further what it is that I'm saying. But I have a bevy of topics, so we're going to kind of quick fire the first 3, maybe 4 topics. Zaire Franklin, I did see he was still on In the Trenches, because I typed it up on YouTube, In the Trenches, but it's no longer called In the Trenches, it's just The Trenches. I was looking at his views, because unfortunately when you create content such as myself and others, you tend to compare yourself to your contemporaries or people that are supposed to be above you. And I'm looking at his views and I'm looking at my views, and unfortunately my views have already surpassed his views. So there's a reason why Joe isn't advertising In the Trenches or The Trenches as being under the JBN. But when I scrolled on his page, I scrolled down, and sure enough, you see Joe Budden podcast. You see episodes of his podcast on Zaire's channel. So if that's not telling me it's under the JBN umbrella, I don't know what to tell you in that regard. But of course, I'm not going to advertise it as such, because your numbers are dwindling or they're at the status of an amateur or a novice content creator. And I can't have that, quote unquote, under my umbrella, even though it's under my umbrella. I also looked on Joe's page to see what podcast he had underneath his own page, and I find it very peculiar that he still has See the Thing Is. I didn't even know Karen Silva had a podcast on his page, something like Girl Need to Know or something along the lines of that. So he had 2 female-oriented podcasts on his page. I want to say 3, unless Olivia was a part of that show with Karen Silva, but he had 2 female podcast-oriented or female-oriented podcasts on his page. He still has, for whatever reason, JBP Cartoons, like that's a podcast. And then he has all of his, like Pull Up, and I didn't even see Humans on there. So that's very peculiar that he took Humans off of his podcast playlist. But anyway, so I looked on Need to Know podcast to see if, just because they have a correlation with Joe, does that mean they have to pull up on Joe's page or vice versa? And the Need to Know podcast with Savon, Alex, and Reggie, I saw wasn't connected to Joe in any way, shape, or form. So salute to them for doing their own thing independently. But the reason I brought up those 2, I guess, creators or podcasts, because Melyssa is starting her podcast on the 1st. So I typed in her page on YouTube. I subscribed. I wanted to check the engagement that she was getting. And I saw that she already had 21,000 subs. So I got ecstatic for her. Like, damn, that's quick. That's dope. Like, I didn't realize her name had that much power. But then when I delved into it a little bit more, I saw that it was her food podcast page. So it was an older page. It was a page created in 2018. And this is not me throwing shots, because my page was created in 2017 and I didn't start utilizing it until last year. So I don't know if she ever used this YouTube page for her previous podcast, but that way is smart in my head, because I already have the page and it's monetized and it's my page. So in essence, that's kind of telling me that Melyssa isn't underneath Joe. Even though I've been saying it this whole time, I'll take that L, because I really and genuinely thought Melyssa was going to be underneath the JBN network, which she is, but just because she's a part of the JBP. So salute to her for genuinely branching off on her own. And I'm not going to talk too much shit about her numbers yet, but considering that she's Melyssa Ford, I would expect her 2 shorts that she has to have well over 5,000 views, and they don't. And then her snippet of what's about to happen, her quote-unquote BTS behind the scenes, it only had like 1,000 views. So it gets harder and harder when you see the people that you're supposedly critiquing not have engagement on their own. So I'm very curious to see how her podcast starts off. I'm not going to go in with the critiquing mindset. I'm not going to go in with the hating mindset. But I am curious, because one thing I do want to see with this transition is, can she get people that were subbed to her from her food podcast to convert to watching her Hot and Bothered podcast? Because that's going to be very telling for me, just in case Joe Budden ever decides he wants to start copywriting all his shit, or if I have to make a pivot, will I be able to pivot? So I'm going to be using Melyssa as my guinea pig on the cool. But anyway, as y'all all know, I had a wonderful week on YouTube, and I was looking at the numbers and the retention rates on my videos and how I can get better. And then, of course, because I get paid from speaking on these people, I went to Flip's page to see, because he constantly keeps pushing long-form content. I don't do skits, long-form content. So I was like, okay, I'm looking at my numbers, and I'll put some screenshots on the video that you can see of what I did previously this week. But I'm slated to already make 2K. As long as I continue at this current pace, I'm slated to make 2K this month from YouTube. And I'm a 4,000 subscriber page. My views now are averaging like 3,000 to 4,000 views a video. And I'm slated to make 2K this week. How much do you think Joe is making on his page, or Flip is making on his page? And Flip got smart because he keeps telling us that he's stolen from the Joe Budden model, but he's not telling us how he stole from the Joe Budden model. But I see it. Look at Joe's page and the length of all the content that he drops. And then go look at Flip's page now and see the length of all the content that he drops. Flip, in essence, is creating a podcast. Except instead of it being a podcast with him just sitting down, he's vlogging. He is genuinely recording his life, and of course he's meeting up with people in Lincoln, but it seems more like a vlogger feel, like the old YouTube, and it's lasting an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of content. I say that to say this: my videos, the duration of views that my videos get are anywhere from 4 to 7 minutes. My videos last anywhere from 7 to 12 minutes, possibly sometimes 18. And on the longer videos, my retention rate is always over 10 minutes. But I'm saying that to say this: if these cats are putting out hours worth of content every single day, and for just 4,000 to 7,000 views, or because I can even put on my RPMs and my CPMs. Because right now, I'll tell you this niche is a nice niche. As much as people talk shit, my RPMs, which is what I receive per every 1,000 views, is at $11 right now. And I don't talk finances or anything like that. Go watch other YouTube channels where they break down the RPMs and the CPMs and stuff for your niche, and see how high $11 per 1,000 views is. So if I'm doing that, and I'm talking about these guys, how much are they making, and what are their retention rates? Joe had something, and if I find the picture, I'll make sure I put it on the video, but Joe had posted his stats a while back on what he was doing on YouTube and on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. And his retention rate, I want to say, was at 108%. It was either at 91% or 108%. That is outrageous. I'll say this: I'm in the top probably 20% when it comes to retention rate, because people watch 50 to 60% of my videos, like all the views. Of course, you're going to have people that are like the most popular creators, and they always get their views and retention rate over 100, but I'm at 60%. So could you imagine what Flip and Joe are at? And don't let them have retention rates over 100%, because throughout the longer, like hour and a half generated podcast, and one of y'all would have to tell me, because I have YouTube Premium, how many ad rolls could you get on that? I only do the beginning ad roll and the mid ad roll. I don't do the end ad rolls, and I don't do a bunch of subset ad rolls throughout the video. Imagine how many ads you can get in that duration of time. And Flip is putting these things out every day now. He got suspended and hasn't looked back. That shit was a double-edged sword for Joe. Joe was trying to teach him a lesson, but the lesson that he wound up teaching him, he taught him how to fish when he was just trying to take away the fish that he was giving him. He went and taught himself how to fish. So I'm looking at these numbers and I'm just in awe, like, damn, dog. And then, given that I'm saying this about about Flip and Joe, why doesn't Ish or Ice or Imani try to come up with a page on YouTube and try to do this on their own, because Melyssa's clearly trying to do the model. And shout out to Melyssa, because she's going to give all the credit to Joe, but who she really got this idea from was Flip. Flip is the one that gave Melyssa the idea to go off and do her own shit, because she's seeing Flip do his own shit. And a lot of people in their heads probably thought that because Flip already came in with it, that he had the advantage because he already came in with it and he was allowed to continue doing it. Joe said when Rory and Ma were on the show, y'all could create your own YouTube pages. I want y'all to create your own YouTube pages and stay on the JBP. Melyssa seemingly is going to be the first person to take that advice. So I don't want to shit on her podcast. I want it to be a good podcast. I just don't know what the topics are going to be about. But like I just said in my other video, she's the gender war queen. And as much as I don't like speaking on those topics, every time I speak on those topics, I'm passionate and I always catch myself responding. So I'll be very curious to see if she can keep that same energy on her own podcast. But man, this is one of those just get my thoughts off episodes. Kind of want to keep in touch with y'all guys. Let y'all know that I'm going to be here every day as long as y'all keep supporting me. I apologize for the audio and the video yesterday. It's the second time it's happened since I started recording again. I record in my car because I could just smoke in my car. I can't smoke at my house. But if I don't disconnect the Bluetooth, it sounds like I'm on a jail phone call. And I got to get better at that, man. I'm going to start putting video clips in the clips, man. Y'all, I'm actually going to start asking for suggestions on videos in my community tab. I'm going to figure out how to do polls and stuff like that as far as that's concerned. But I appreciate all the genuine support. I appreciate all the genuine hate. Either way it goes, it creates engagement for the page. It creates engagement for the community, and we can keep this thing rocking. Until tomorrow, y'all make sure y'all stay safe. Peace.